The text message arrived at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday that started like any other. "Come home now, emergency. Don't call first." My wife Beth never texted in all caps, ever. In 15 years of marriage, she'd maintained her composure through everything. My father's funeral, our daughter's broken arm, even the time our basement flooded. But here she was, digitally screaming at me. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I was elbow deep in the electrical panel of a downtown office building, rewiring circuits that some hack had botched so badly it looked like spaghetti. My company, Tate Electrical, had built its reputation on fixing other people's mistakes. Ironic, considering I was about to discover I'd missed the biggest electrical fault of all, the one running straight through my own home. "Boss, you look like you've seen a ghost," said Tommy, my foreman, wiping grease off his hands with a shop rag. "Wife emergency," I muttered, already packing my tools. "Can you finish up here?" "Sure thing. Hope everything's okay." Everything wasn't okay. I could feel it in my gut like a bad ground fault, that buzzing sensation that tells you something's about to blow. The drive home took 23 minutes through rush hour traffic. I spent every red light imagining scenarios. Medical emergency? Burglary? Had something happened to our daughters, Becca and Brianna? They were 15 and 13 now, old enough to get into real trouble, but young enough to make spectacularly bad decisions. Our house sat on Maple Street in Riverside Heights, a neighborhood where the lawns stayed green and the property values climbed steadily upward. I'd bought it 8 years ago when the business really took off, back when Beth still smiled when I came home covered in dust and wire shavings. The moving truck in our driveway should have been my first clue. I parked behind the massive U-Haul and walked toward the front door, my tool belt jangling with each step. 2 guys in matching gray uniforms were loading our dining room table, the one Beth had insisted we buy from that overpriced furniture store downtown. "Excuse me," I called out. "What's going on here?" The older mover, a guy with arms like tree trunks, barely glanced up. "Moving job, sir. Lady of the house hired us." "I am the house," I said, which sounded stupider out loud than it had in my head. Beth appeared in the doorway wearing her navy blue power suit, the one she wore to important meetings at the marketing firm where she worked. Her blonde hair was pulled back in that severe bun that meant business. In her manicured hands, she held a manila envelope. "Jamie," she said, her voice carrying all the warmth of a January morning, "we need to talk." "About the moving truck? Because that seems like the kind of thing married people usually discuss first." She stepped aside as the movers carried out our coffee table. "Inside. Now." Our living room looked like a crime scene. Half the furniture was gone, leaving pale rectangles on the hardwood where pieces had sat for years. Family photos had vanished from the mantel. Even the throw pillows, those ridiculous decorative things Beth loved, had disappeared. "Sit down," Beth said, gesturing to the one remaining chair. "I'll stand, thanks. Feels safer." She held out the manila envelope. "Divorce papers. I'm filing tomorrow." The words hit me like grabbing a live wire. That same shock, that moment where your brain can't process what just happened to your body. I took the envelope with hands that suddenly felt disconnected from my arms. "Divorce," I repeated, as if saying it might make sense. "I've retained Patricia Morrison as my attorney. She's very good." Patricia Morrison. I knew that name. She was the lawyer who'd taken Dave Hendricks for everything he had 2 years ago. Dave still lived in a studio apartment and drove a 15-year-old Honda. "Beth, what the hell is going on? This morning you asked me to pick up milk on the way home." This morning I was still pretending. She smoothed her skirt and sat on the edge of the couch like she was conducting a business meeting. "I can't do it anymore, Jamie. I'm not happy. I haven't been happy for years. So we get counseling. We work on it. We don't blow up 15 years of marriage with a moving truck and legal papers. It's too late for that. The movers tramped through again, this time carrying boxes labeled Beth's Books and Master Bedroom. I watched our life get loaded onto a truck one piece at a time. Where are the girls? They're with me. We're staying somewhere else for now. Staying where? Beth's composure cracked for just a second. Her eyes darted away, and she fiddled with her wedding ring, the one she was apparently planning to return. That's not really your concern anymore. Like hell it's not. They're my daughters too. And you'll have visitation rights. Patricia says, I don't give a damn what Patricia says. The words came out louder than I'd intended, echoing off the half-empty walls. I want to know where my children are sleeping tonight. Beth stood up, smoothing her skirt again. It was her tell, that gesture. She did it when she was lying to clients, when she was nervous, when she was hiding something. They're safe and comfortable. That's all you need to know right now. I opened the envelope and scanned the legal documents inside. Irreconcilable differences, temporary custody arrangement, division of assets. The language was cold and clinical, reducing our entire marriage to bullet points and legal terminology. When did you plan this? I asked. Jamie. When? Because this isn't something you throw together in an afternoon. You hired Morrison. You rented a truck. You found somewhere else to live. When did you decide to destroy our family? I didn't destroy anything. We've been broken for years. I'm just finally admitting it. The movers came back for the entertainment center. Our wedding photo sat on top of it, the one where we're both laughing at something the photographer said. Beth looked radiant in her white dress, and I looked like the luckiest guy alive. One of the movers picked up the frame, glanced at it, and tossed it into a box marked miscellaneous. I want to see the girls. Not today. They're upset, and seeing you will only make it worse. Make it worse? I'm their father, not some stranger off the street. You're the father who's about to make their lives very complicated. I stared at her, this woman I'd loved since college, trying to find some trace of the person who used to laugh at my jokes and steal bites of my dessert. She was gone, replaced by this cold, efficient stranger in a business suit. There's someone else, I said. It wasn't a question. Beth's hand went to her skirt again, smooth, smooth, smooth. This isn't about another person. This is about us not working anymore. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting today. The movers finished loading the truck and came inside for Beth's signature. She signed the paperwork with the same pen she used to sign birthday cards, her handwriting neat and controlled. The older mover handed her a receipt and tipped his cap. All set, ma'am. We'll have everything delivered by 6. Delivered where? I wanted to ask, but Beth was already walking them to the door. I heard the truck rumble to life and pull away, taking half of our life with it. I'll be back tomorrow for the rest of my things, Beth said, slipping her purse over her shoulder. What about dinner? What about homework? What about all the normal stuff that happens in a family? We're not a family anymore, Jamie. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be. She walked toward the door, her heels clicking on the hardwood like a countdown timer. Beth, wait. She paused, but didn't turn around. Who is he? Her shoulders tensed. For a moment, I thought she might actually tell me the truth. Then she straightened up and opened the door. Call Patricia if you want to discuss anything else. I've said everything I came here to say. The door closed behind her with a soft click that somehow sounded louder than if she'd slammed it. I stood alone in my half-empty house, holding divorce papers and wondering how my life had just imploded without any warning signs. But that wasn't quite true, was it? There had been signs. Late nights at the office, weekend work conferences that seemed to multiply. The way she'd started dressing nicer, wearing perfume to the grocery store, checking her phone constantly and tilting the screen away when I walked by. I'd noticed. I just hadn't wanted to see. My phone buzzed with a text message. For a wild second, I hoped it was Beth, saying she'd made a mistake, asking me to come get her. It was from my brother John. Heard about the separation. Sorry, man. Call if you need anything. Heard about it? From who? Beth and I hadn't told anyone yet. Hell, I'd only found out myself 20 minutes ago. Unless I scrolled through my contacts and called my sister Connie. She answered on the second ring. Jamie? Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Are you okay? How did you hear? John called me an hour ago. He said Beth had asked him to give us a heads up so we wouldn't be blindsided when people started talking. John, my older brother, the golden child who'd never met a situation he couldn't charm his way through. John, who worked as our company's vice president and business development manager. John, who'd always been a little too interested in Beth's career, a little too quick to offer help when I was working late. Did he say anything else? Just that you two had been having problems for a while, and that he was worried about you. Jamie, I had no idea things were so bad. Neither did I. After I hung up with Connie, I walked through the house, taking inventory of what was left. Beth had been surgical in her selections. She'd taken anything of value, anything with sentimental meaning, anything that would leave the biggest hole. What remained felt like a stage set after the play had ended. In our bedroom, my bedroom now, her closet stood empty except for wire hangers and dust bunnies. Her jewelry box was gone from the dresser. Even her pillow had vanished from the bed. I sat on the edge of the mattress and tried to call my daughters. Both phones went straight to voicemail. Hey, Becca, it's Dad. I know this is confusing and scary, but I want you to know that I love you and your sister more than anything in the world. Call me when you get this, okay? I left a similar message for Brianna, then sat in the silence of my empty house and tried to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do next. The answer came to me around midnight, after I'd eaten a dinner of stale crackers and warm beer while sitting on my kitchen floor. I was going to find out who Beth was sleeping with. And then I was going to make sure everyone knew exactly what kind of person had destroyed my family. I just didn't realize yet that the person I was looking for lived a lot closer than I thought. The next morning, I called in sick for the first time in 3 years. Tommy could handle the crew for one day, and I had more important things to do than troubleshoot faulty wiring. I had a marriage to autopsy. Beth had always been careful with her digital footprints, but 15 years of living together had taught me a few things. She used the same 3 passwords for everything, rotated between them based on some system only she understood. More importantly, she'd never bothered to remove my access to our shared accounts. I started with our cell phone records. 3 months of data painted a picture that made my coffee taste like acid. Beth had been texting and calling one number more than any other, including mine. The calls started around 10 weeks ago, always during business hours, always lasting between 15 and 45 minutes. The number looked familiar, but I couldn't place it until I cross-referenced it with my work contacts. John Tate. My brother. My business partner. The man who'd stood beside me at my wedding and promised to always have my back. I printed out 6 pages of phone records, highlighting every call and text between them. The pattern was unmistakable. They'd started talking daily in early January. By February, they were exchanging dozens of messages. March brought longer calls, often late at night after I'd gone to bed. My hands were shaking as I reached for my phone to call John directly. Then I stopped. Confronting him now would be stupid. I needed more evidence, more ammunition. I needed to be absolutely sure before I blew up what was left of my family. Instead, I drove to the office. Tate Electrical occupied a converted warehouse in the industrial district with our main office upstairs and the shop floor below. Dad had started the company 42 years ago with a pickup truck and a toolbox. When he retired 5 years back, he'd split ownership between John and me, 60-40, with John getting the bigger share because he was older and handled the business side. I'd never resented that arrangement until today. Jamie. Mary, our office manager, looked surprised to see me. I thought you were sick. Feeling better. Is John in? Conference call with the Morrison project. Should be done in about 20 minutes. Morrison. That name again. Was that a coincidence, or was my wife's divorce attorney somehow connected to our biggest commercial client? I'll wait in my office. My office was really just a corner of the main room with a desk and filing cabinets. John had the private office with actual walls and a door that closed. Another reminder of the hierarchy I'd never questioned before. I spent the next hour going through our company files, looking for anything that connected Beth to our business beyond the occasional Christmas party. What I found was worse than I'd expected. Beth had been consulting for us, unofficially, off the books, but her fingerprints were all over our marketing materials from the past 6 months. The new website design, the updated logo, the social media strategy that had tripled our online engagement. John had been paying her through a shell company called Riverside Marketing Solutions. $10,000 over 3 months, all approved by him without consulting me. Money that came out of our shared profits. Money that had indirectly been funding my wife's affair with my brother. Jamie? John's voice made me jump. He stood in the doorway of my cubicle, looking concerned. Mary said you were sick. I got better. John was 43, 3 years older than me, and had inherited Dad's natural charisma along with his thick brown hair and easy smile. Women had always liked John. In high school, he'd dated 3 different girls simultaneously, without any of them finding out. In college, he'd talked his way out of academic probation twice. As an adult, he'd charmed clients, suppliers, and apparently my wife. You look terrible, he said. Maybe you should go home, get some rest. I'm fine. Actually, I wanted to ask you about something. I held up the Riverside marketing invoices. When were you planning to tell me we'd hired Beth as a consultant? John's easy smile flickered for just a second. It was just some small projects. I didn't think you'd mind. Small projects? 10 grand is small? Jamie, come on. She's family, and her work has been great. Look at our website traffic numbers. She's about to not be family. Did you know that? John sat down in the chair across from my desk, his expression shifting to concern. She told me yesterday. I'm sorry, man. I know this has to be hard. She told you yesterday, before she told me. She was upset, needed someone to talk to. She called me after she met with her lawyer. I leaned back in my chair and studied my brother's face. He was good at lying, always had been, but I knew his tells, the way he rubbed his left temple when he was nervous, the way his voice got slightly higher when he was making things up. What did she say exactly? Just that things hadn't been working between you two for a while, that she'd tried to make it work, but couldn't anymore. And you believed her? Jamie, I've seen how you two interact at family gatherings. The tension, the way you barely talk to each other. This isn't exactly a shock. He was right about that, which made it harder to argue. Beth and I had been going through the motions for months, maybe longer. We'd become roommates who shared a mortgage and parenting duties, not lovers who couldn't wait to see each other at the end of the day. But that didn't excuse what they'd done. I want to see the records for all the work she did for us, I said. Why? Because I'm a 50% owner of this company, and I want to know what my money paid for. John stood up, his jaw tightening. Your money? This is a partnership, Jamie. We make decisions together. Apparently not all decisions. What's that supposed to mean? I stood up too, and suddenly we were facing each other across my desk like we were kids again, fighting over who got the last piece of cake. It means my wife was taking money from our company while she was planning to divorce me. It means you approved payments to her without consulting me. It means I'm starting to wonder what other decisions you've been making without my input. You're being paranoid. Am I? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my business partner was funding my wife's exit strategy. John's face flushed red. That's not what happened. Then what did happen? He opened his mouth, then closed it again, rubbed his left temple, looked everywhere except at me. We needed marketing help. Beth was available and qualified. It was business. Business, right. I sat back down and pulled out the phone records I'd printed earlier. Is this business too? I slid the papers across the desk. John glanced at them, and his face went pale. Jamie, I can explain. 47 calls in 3 weeks. Some of them lasting over an hour. Some of them after midnight. What kind of marketing consultation happens at midnight, John? It's not what you think. What I think is that my brother has been screwing my wife. The words hung in the air between us like a live electrical wire, dangerous and crackling with energy. John stared at me for a long moment, and I could see him calculating, trying to figure out how much I knew and how much I was guessing. She came to me for advice, he said finally. About the marriage, about what to do. She was unhappy, Jamie. Really unhappy. So you decided to help her be happier. It wasn't like that. What was it like? John sat down again, suddenly looking older than his 43 years. She needed someone to talk to, someone who understood both of you, who could maybe help fix things. By sleeping with her? We never... He stopped, caught himself before the lie could fully form. It's complicated. It's really not. You're either sleeping with my wife or you're not. John was quiet for a long time, staring at his hands. When he finally looked up, his eyes were filled with something that might have been guilt or might have been defiance. She's filing for divorce anyway, Jamie. What happened between us didn't cause that. It was already over. So you thought you'd help it along. I thought I'd be there for someone who needed support. Support? Is that what we're calling it now? I stood up and walked to the window that looked out over our shop floor. 3 of our guys were loading wire and conduit into the company trucks, getting ready for the day's jobs. Normal work for a normal day, while my life disintegrated 20 feet above their heads. How long? I asked without turning around. Jamie, how long have you been sleeping with my wife? 2 months, maybe a little more. I closed my eyes and counted to 10, then 20. When I opened them, I could see John's reflection in the window, watching me nervously. I want you to buy me out, I said. What? You heard me. I want out of the partnership. Buy me out or I'll force a dissolution and we can split everything down the middle in court. Jamie, you don't mean that. I turned around to face him. I've never meant anything more in my life. This is your dad's company too, your legacy. My legacy is watching my brother destroy my family while stealing from our business? No thanks. I didn't steal anything. You paid my wife $10,000 of company money without telling me while you were having an affair with her. What would you call it? John stood up, his face flushed again. I'd call it helping someone I care about. Someone you care about. That's beautiful, John. Really touching. Don't be sarcastic. This is hard enough already. Hard for who? You? Because from where I'm sitting, you got everything you wanted. The business, the girl, and your brother out of the picture. That's not what I wanted. Isn't it? We stared at each other across the small space of my cubicle. 37 years of brotherhood reduced to this moment of complete betrayal. John opened his mouth to say something else, but I held up my hand. Save it. I don't want to hear any more explanations or justifications or whatever else you're planning to say. I want a buyout offer by Friday, or I'm calling a lawyer. Jamie, get out of my office. John hesitated for a moment, then walked away. I heard him talking to Mary in low voices, probably telling her I was having a breakdown, that I needed time to process everything. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was having a breakdown. But if I was going down, I was taking them both with me. That evening, I sat in my empty house with a bottle of bourbon and tried to figure out how to tell my daughters that their uncle was sleeping with their mother. The bourbon didn't help with the logistics, but it made the whole situation feel slightly less like a bad dream. Around 9 o'clock, my phone rang. Beth. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. "About what? I thought Patricia was handling all our communication now." "About John. He said you confronted him today." Confronted. That's an interesting word choice. I prefer discovered the truth. "Jamie, please, can we just talk like adults?" Adults don't sleep with their brother-in-law while planning a divorce. "I'm coming over." "I don't think that's a good idea." I'm already in the driveway. Through the living room window, I could see her car parked behind mine. She was wearing jeans and a sweater, looking more like the woman I'd married, and less like the corporate shark who'd served me papers yesterday. I opened the door before she could knock. "Where are the girls?" "With my sister for the night." She stepped into the house and looked around at the half-empty rooms. "This is depressing." "Yeah, well, that's what happens when someone steals half your furniture." "I didn't steal anything. I took what was mine." "Including my brother?" Beth flinched like I'd slapped her. "Can we sit down?" "You took the couch." "The kitchen table, then." We sat across from each other at the table where we'd eaten thousands of meals, helped the girls with homework, paid bills, and planned family vacations. Now it felt like a negotiation table between hostile countries. "I never meant for it to happen this way," Beth said. "What way did you mean for it to happen?" "I wanted to tell you about John after the divorce was final. I thought it would be easier." "Easier for who?" "For everyone. For the girls, for your family, for the business." I poured bourbon into my coffee mug and offered the bottle to Beth. She shook her head. "So the plan was to divorce me, then start dating my brother publicly? Like that would somehow be less humiliating?" "The plan was to be honest about our feelings after we'd handled the practical stuff." "Practical stuff? You mean dividing up our assets and destroying our family?" "Jamie, our marriage has been over for years. You know that." She was right, and that made it worse somehow. We'd been sleepwalking through our relationship for so long that I'd stopped noticing when we stopped connecting. When had we last had a real conversation about anything other than schedules and logistics? When had we last laughed together, or stayed up late talking, or made love like we meant it instead of just going through the motions? "Maybe it was over," I said, "but it didn't have to end like this." "How should it have ended?" "With honesty, with respect, without involving my brother." Beth looked down at her hands, and I noticed she was still wearing her wedding ring. "John didn't pursue me, if that's what you're thinking. It wasn't some calculated seduction." "What was it then?" "We were working together on the marketing projects, spending time together, talking about business, about family. He was easy to talk to." "Unlike your husband." "You were always working, Jamie. When you came home, you were tired and distracted. We barely talked anymore." "So you started talking to John instead?" "At first, yes. Just talking. About work, about the girls, about everything. He listened to me in a way that you hadn't in years." I took a long drink of bourbon and tried to process this. "When did talking turn into something else?" "I don't know. Gradually. We were spending so much time together, and he was so attentive, so interested in what I had to say. One day we were discussing logo designs, and the next day we were discussing how unhappy I was in my marriage. And he was happy to help solve that problem. He was supportive. He made me feel valued. I valued you. You took me for granted." That hit harder than I'd expected, probably because it was true. Somewhere along the way, I'd stopped seeing Beth as the woman I'd fallen in love with, and started seeing her as just another part of my daily routine. Wife, mother, household manager. Someone who made sure the bills got paid and the girls got to soccer practice, but not someone I needed to court or impress or romance. "So you decided to have an affair." "I decided to file for divorce. The affair just happened." "Affairs don't just happen, Beth. They're choices. A series of choices. You're right. And I made those choices because I was lonely and unhappy and tired of feeling invisible in my own marriage. We sat in silence for a while, the weight of 15 years of accumulated resentments settling between us like dust. Outside, I could hear the Hendersons' dog barking at something in their backyard. "Do you love him?" I asked finally. Beth was quiet for so long that I thought she might not answer. When she did, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I think so. Yes." "And he loves you?" "He says he does." "What about the girls? Have you thought about how this is going to affect them?" "Of course I have. That's all I think about. Their father and their uncle. Jesus, Beth, do you have any idea how messed up this is going to make them?" "It doesn't have to be messed up. Families are complicated. The girls will adjust." "Families are complicated, but this is insane. You're dating their uncle, their father's business partner, the guy who's been coming to Christmas dinner for 15 years. I know it's not ideal. Not ideal? It's a disaster. It's going to destroy relationships that have nothing to do with our marriage. What about Connie? What about Mom? What about our friends?" Beth's composure finally cracked. "Don't you think I know that? Don't you think I've thought about all of that? But I can't stay married to you just to avoid making things awkward at family gatherings. You could have divorced me without sleeping with John." "Yes, I could have. But I didn't." The simple honesty of that statement hit me harder than all her explanations and justifications. She was right. She could have handled this differently, but she'd chosen not to. She'd chosen John, chosen the affair, chosen to blow up our entire extended family along with our marriage. "I want to see the girls," I said. "Tomorrow. We can arrange something tomorrow. I want to see them tonight. They're upset, Jamie. Becca has been crying all day and Brianna won't talk to anyone. Seeing you right now will just make it harder. Harder for them or harder for you? For everyone." I finished the bourbon in my mug and considered pouring another. "Where are you living?" "We're staying with John for now, just until I can find an apartment." "You're living with him, with my daughters." "It's temporary. My daughters are living in my brother's house while he's sleeping with their mother." "Jamie, get out!" "What?" "Get out of my house, right now." Beth stood up slowly, her eyes filling with tears. "I know you're angry. I'm not angry. I'm done. Done talking, done trying to understand, done pretending this is some kind of civilized adult conversation. You want to destroy our family? Fine. But don't expect me to sit here and listen to you explain why it's all my fault. It's not all your fault. How generous of you to say so." Beth walked toward the door, then turned back. "For what it's worth, I am sorry. I never wanted to hurt you." "But you did it anyway." "Yes, I did it anyway." After she left, I sat at the kitchen table and finished the bottle of bourbon. Then I went upstairs to my empty bedroom and lay on my half-empty bed, staring at the ceiling and trying to figure out how to put my life back together. The answer came to me around 3 a.m, in that moment of clarity that sometimes arrives with insomnia and alcohol. I couldn't put my life back together. That life was over, destroyed by 2 people I'd trusted more than anyone else in the world. But I could build something new, something better, something that didn't include a cheating wife and a backstabbing brother. I just had to make sure they both understood the cost of their choices. I remembered something then, a moment from 6 months ago that I'd dismissed at the time. Beth had come home from one of her work conferences looking flustered and guilty. She'd said she was meeting her ex-boyfriend from college, some guy named David, who was supposedly in town on business. She'd selected an expensive bottle of wine from our collection, our anniversary Bordeaux that we'd been saving for a special occasion. "I'm meeting my ex, don't wait up for me tonight," she'd said, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. I'd replied, "Okay, enjoy," like the trusting fool I was. but something had bothered me about it. Maybe it was the way she'd avoided eye contact, or the fact that she'd dressed up more than usual, or just the general weirdness of meeting an ex-boyfriend for drinks. So I'd done something I'd never done before in our marriage. I'd followed her. Not physically, I wasn't ready to become that guy yet, but I'd done something much more subtle. While she was in the shower getting ready, I'd taken a thin sewing needle and carefully injected a small amount of liquid laxative into the wine cork, just enough to ruin whatever romantic evening she had planned. 12 hours later, she'd returned home, looking miserable and embarrassed. She'd claimed David had food poisoning and had to cut their evening short. She'd seemed relieved that their reunion had been a disaster, and I'd never questioned her story. Now I realized she hadn't been meeting David at all. She'd been meeting John, and my little act of sabotage had probably ruined their first real date. The memory should have made me feel guilty. Instead, it made me smile for the first time in 2 days. If I could ruin their evening with a sewing needle and some X-Lax, what could I do with real planning and genuine motivation? I was about to find out. Friday morning brought John's buyout offer, a certified letter delivered by courier, as if we were strangers conducting a hostile business transaction instead of brothers who'd built a company together. The offer was insulting. $200,000 for my half of a business that was worth at least $800,000, maybe more. John was betting I'd take whatever he offered just to get away from the situation quickly and quietly. He was wrong. I called Patricia Morrison's office and made an appointment for that afternoon. If Beth wanted to play hardball with lawyers, I could play that game too. Patricia's office was in one of those glass towers downtown, where parking cost $20 and everyone wore suits that cost more than most people's cars. She was exactly what I'd expected. Mid-50s, silver hair, sharp eyes, and a handshake that could crack walnuts. Mr. Tate, I understand you'd like to discuss your divorce proceedings. Among other things. Patricia gestured to a leather chair across from her massive desk. Behind her, floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the city that was probably supposed to be intimidating. I should mention that I'm representing your wife in this matter, so there are certain ethical boundaries. I'm not here about the divorce. I'm here about my business. Your business? I pulled out John's buyout offer and slid it across her desk. My brother is trying to force me out of our company for a quarter of what my share is worth. I need to know my options. Patricia scanned the letter, her expression neutral. This is a partnership dissolution issue. I don't handle business law. But you do handle the Morrison Group account, don't you? Her eyes sharpened. What does that have to do with anything? The Morrison Group is our biggest client, 40% of our revenue last year. My wife has been doing consulting work for them through my brother, using company resources and inside information to underbid our competitors. That's a serious accusation. It's also provable. I have invoices, email records, and phone logs showing coordination between my wife, my brother, and Morrison Group executives. What I want to know is whether you facilitated those connections. Patricia set down the letter and leaned back in her chair. Mr. Tate, I think you should leave. I think I should stay, unless you'd prefer to have this conversation with the State Bar Association. Are you threatening me? I'm asking questions. About potential conflicts of interest, about whether you used your relationship with Morrison Group to benefit my wife's consulting business, and about whether that constitutes legal malpractice. Patricia was quiet for a long moment, studying me like I was a puzzle she couldn't solve. Finally, she picked up her phone. Janet, cancel my 3 o'clock, and close my door. After her assistant left, Patricia poured herself a glass of water from a crystal pitcher and offered me one. I declined. Your wife came to me 6 months ago asking about divorce procedures, standard consultation, nothing unusual. During our conversation, she mentioned that she was doing marketing work for small businesses, including your electrical company. And you mentioned that you represented Morrison Group. I may have suggested that they were always looking for qualified contractors and marketing consultants. For a fee. I don't take fees for referrals, Mr. Tate, but I do maintain relationships with my clients. Relationships that benefit your other clients. Sometimes. It's not illegal, and it's not unethical. What about representing my wife in a divorce while simultaneously helping her build a business relationship that undermines my company? Patricia sipped her water and considered this. That's a more complicated question. I bet it is. What do you want, Mr. Tate? I want you to stop representing my wife. That's not going to happen. Then I want you to recuse yourself from anything involving Morrison Group while you're handling her divorce. Also, not going to happen. I stood up and walked to her window, looking down at the street 40 floors below. People looked like ants from this height, scurrying around with no apparent purpose. My wife and my brother have been planning this for months, I said without turning around. The affair, the divorce, the business takeover. They've been using your connections and your legal advice to systematically destroy my life while enriching themselves. That's a very dramatic way of putting it. Is it inaccurate? Patricia was quiet for a moment. Your wife is unhappy in her marriage and wants a divorce. Your brother offered her emotional support during a difficult time. These things happen. These things were planned. Can you prove that? I turned around and smiled. Not yet, but I'm working on it. Mr. Tate, I'm going to give you some free advice. Accept your brother's buyout offer. Agree to a reasonable divorce settlement, and move on with your life. Fighting this will only make things more expensive and more painful for everyone involved. Including you? Including me. I walked back to her desk and picked up John's letter. Thanks for the advice. I'll give it all the consideration it deserves. Which is none, I'm guessing. You're a smart lady, Patricia. I can see why Beth likes you. I left her office and spent the rest of the afternoon driving around the city, thinking about everything I'd learned. Beth, John, and Patricia had been working together to orchestrate my downfall while positioning themselves to profit from it. The divorce wasn't the end result of a failed marriage. It was a business plan. That changed everything. By the time I got home, I'd made 3 decisions. First, I was going to fight the divorce and the buyout with everything I had. Second, I was going to expose the conspiracy between Beth, John, and Patricia to anyone who would listen. Third, I was going to make sure they all paid a price for what they'd done. I started by calling Dave Hendricks. Dave was the guy who'd lost everything in his divorce 2 years ago, the one who now lived in a studio apartment and drove a beat-up Honda. He'd been Patricia Morrison's client too, right up until she'd helped his ex-wife take him for every penny he had. Jamie? Jesus, I heard about you and Beth. I'm sorry, man. Thanks. Listen, I need to ask you about Patricia Morrison. Your wife's lawyer? What about her? Did she ever mention conflicts of interest during your divorce? Connections between her other clients and your ex-wife? Dave was quiet for a moment. Why do you ask? Because I think she's running the same play on me that she ran on you. Meet me at Murphy's bar in an hour. And Jamie, bring a notebook. Murphy's bar was the kind of place where divorced guys went to drink away their alimony payments. Dark, cheap, and full of men who'd learned the hard way that marriage was a business transaction disguised as a love story. Dave was already there when I arrived, nursing a beer and looking older than his 45 years. He'd lost weight since his divorce, and his clothes hung loose on his frame like he was shrinking from the inside out. Patricia Morrison is a predator, he said without preamble. She doesn't just represent women in divorces, she orchestrates them. What do you mean? I mean she identifies wealthy men with unhappy wives, then helps those wives maximize their divorce settlements while minimizing their legal exposure. She's got a whole network of consultants, investigators, and business contacts who help her clients hide assets, inflate expenses, and destroy their husband's earning potential. Dave pulled out a manila folder thick with documents. I spent 2 years investigating what she did to me. Want to know what I found? For the next hour, Dave walked me through Patricia's operation. She didn't just practice divorce law, She ran a sophisticated wealth redistribution scheme that had made her rich while destroying dozens of families. She helped my ex-wife start a consulting business 6 months before she filed for divorce, Dave said. Used her connections to get Linda contracts with companies I'd been trying to work with for years. By the time we went to court, Linda had a thriving business, and I looked like a failure who couldn't support his family. Did you report her to the bar association? I tried, but everything she did was technically legal. Unethical as hell, but legal. What about your ex-wife? Did she face any consequences? Dave laughed bitterly. Linda's doing great. Remarried to one of Patricia's other clients, a guy whose wife Patricia helped divorce him the year before. They're like a divorce recycling program. I bought Dave another beer and asked him to tell me everything he knew about Patricia's methods. By the time we finished talking, I had a clear picture of what Beth and John were planning, and more importantly, I had a plan to stop them. One more question, I said as we were leaving. Do you ever regret fighting instead of just walking away? Dave considered this for a moment. Every day. But I also sleep better at night knowing I didn't just roll over and let them destroy me without a fight. Even though you lost? Who says I lost? I'm still here, aren't I? I'm still standing. Patricia and Linda thought they'd broken me, but they just made me stronger. Dave walked to his beat-up Honda and drove away, leaving me standing in the parking lot with a folder full of evidence and a head full of ideas. Beth and John thought they were playing chess while I was playing checkers. They thought they were sophisticated and I was simple, that they were smart and I was just a blue-collar guy who worked with his hands. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Saturday morning, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went to see my daughters without asking Beth's permission first. John lived in a McMansion in the suburbs, one of those oversized houses that tried to look impressive but just looked desperate. I parked across the street and watched for 20 minutes, noting the patterns. Beth's car in the driveway, John's BMW in the garage, my daughter's bikes on the front porch. At 10:15, Becca came outside to get the mail. She was 15 now, tall and athletic like her mother, but with my stubborn chin and skeptical eyes. She saw me immediately. I got out of my car and walked across the street. Hey, kiddo. Dad? She looked back at the house nervously. What are you doing here? I came to see you and your sister. I've been calling, but your phones go straight to voicemail. Mom said we shouldn't talk to you until things settle down. Things are never going to settle down, Becca. This is the new normal, but that doesn't mean I stop being your father. The front door opened and Beth appeared, wearing John's bathrobe and a furious expression. Jamie, you can't just show up here. I can show up anywhere my daughters are. Not without permission. I don't need permission to see my own kids. John appeared behind Beth, shirtless and trying to look intimidating. It might have worked if I hadn't known him since he was 5 years old and afraid of thunderstorms. Jamie, you need to leave. I need to talk to my daughters. They don't want to talk to you right now. I looked at Becca, who was standing between me and the house, like she was trying to decide which side of a war to join. Is that true, Beck? You don't want to talk to me? I don't know, Dad. Everything's so messed up. I know it is. That's why we need to talk. Beth stepped forward, tightening the belt on John's bathrobe. The girls are confused and upset. Seeing you right now will just make it worse. Worse than living with their uncle while he's sleeping with their mother? Jamie. Worse than watching their family get destroyed by two people who were supposed to love them? Dad, stop! Becca's voice was small and scared. Please, just stop! I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw the damage that had already been done. Dark circles under her eyes, tension in her shoulders, the expression of a kid who'd been forced to grow up too fast because the adults in her life had failed her. I'm sorry, Beck, you're right. This isn't the place for this conversation. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. I'm putting my number in your contacts, not Mom's phone, your phone. When you're ready to talk, call me, day or night, okay? Becca nodded and took my phone, entering her number with shaking fingers. What about Brianna? I asked. She's sleeping. She didn't sleep much last night. Tell her I love her. Tell her I love you both and that none of this is your fault. I will. I started to walk back to my car, then turned around. Beth, I want to see them tomorrow. Somewhere neutral. The park, or lunch, or whatever they're comfortable with. I wasn't asking. John stepped forward, puffing out his chest. You can't just make demands, Jamie. Watch me. We stared at each other across John's perfect suburban lawn, 37 years of brotherhood reduced to this moment of pure hostility. I could see the neighbors starting to take notice, curtains twitching and heads turning. 1 o'clock tomorrow, I said. Riverside Park. If they're not there, I'll be back here with a lawyer and a court order. I got in my car and drove away, leaving them standing in the driveway looking like the guilty parties they were. That afternoon, I went to the office to collect some personal items and found Tommy loading equipment into one of the trucks. Working Saturday? I asked. Emergency call. Water main break at the Morrison building downtown. John said it was all hands on deck. Morrison. Again. Everything seemed to circle back to that account. Where is John? Conference room, talking to the client. I walked upstairs and found John on a video call with 3 people I recognized from Morrison Group's executive team. He was using his most professional voice, the one he saved for important clients and family funerals. Absolutely understand the urgency. We'll have a full crew there by 2 o'clock, and we'll work through the weekend if necessary. I knocked on the conference room door and walked in without waiting for permission. John's face went pale when he saw me. Gentlemen, I need to call you back in 5 minutes. Something urgent has come up. He ended the call and turned to face me. What are you doing here? It's still my company until the paperwork says otherwise. Jamie, this isn't a good time. It's never a good time with you anymore. I sat down across from him at the conference table. Emergency call at Morrison Group. Funny how many emergencies they seem to have. What's that supposed to mean? It means they've been our biggest client for 8 months, ever since Beth started consulting for them. It means we're doing work for them that we're not qualified for, at prices that don't make sense, on schedules that are impossible. We're expanding our capabilities, growing the business. We're being set up. John leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. Set up how? Morrison Group is going to claim we did substandard work. They're going to demand repairs, refunds, maybe even sue us for damages. And when they do, our insurance won't cover it because we were working outside our licensed capabilities. That's paranoid thinking. Is it? Because I spent yesterday going through our Morrison contracts, and they're all structured the same way. Vague specifications, impossible deadlines, and penalty clauses that could bankrupt us if anything goes wrong. John was quiet for a moment, and I could see him thinking, calculating. Even if that were true, which it's not, we've already done the work. We can't undo it now. We can document everything. Take photos, get written approvals, make sure we're protected if they try to blame us for problems that aren't our fault. Or we can just do good work and not worry about conspiracy theories. I stood up and walked to the window that looked down at our shop floor. Most of our guys were gone on the Morrison job, leaving the place feeling empty and quiet. Remember when Dad started this company? I asked. Of course. He had one rule. Never take a job you can't do right. Never promise something you can't deliver. Never trust a client who wants something for nothing. Times have changed, Jamie. We have to adapt. Adapt or get manipulated by people who are smarter than we are. John stood up too, his jaw tightening. What's that supposed to mean? It means Patricia Morrison has been playing us from the beginning. She connected Beth to Morrison Group, helped her start a consulting business that competes with our services, And now she's positioning them to destroy our company while Beth profits from our failure. That's insane. Is it? Because it would solve a lot of problems for everyone involved. Beth gets a thriving business and a clean divorce settlement. You get full control of what's left of our company. Patricia gets fees from everyone involved, and I get left with nothing. John walked around the table until he was standing directly in front of me. You're losing your mind. Maybe. Or maybe I'm finally seeing clearly for the first time in months. Jamie, I know you're hurt and angry. I'm not hurt and angry. I'm awake. For the first time in years, I'm paying attention to what's actually happening instead of just going through the motions. What's actually happening is that your marriage failed and you're looking for someone to blame. My marriage failed because my wife was sleeping with my brother while planning to destroy my business. That's not blame. That's fact. John's face flushed red. I didn't destroy anything. I tried to help Beth through a difficult situation. By sleeping with her. By being there for her when you weren't. When I wasn't what? When you weren't paying attention to her. When you weren't making her feel valued or appreciated or loved. So this is my fault. It's nobody's fault. It's just what happened. I stared at my brother, this man I'd trusted with my business, my family, and my future, and realized that he actually believed what he was saying. In his mind, he was the hero of this story, the white knight who'd rescued an unhappy woman from a neglectful husband. You're right, I said finally. It is what happened, and now I'm going to show you what happens next. I walked out of the conference room and down to the shop floor, where I spent the next hour photographing and documenting every piece of equipment, every tool, every supply that belonged to the company. If John wanted to play games with Morrison Group, he could do it without my half of our assets. By the time I finished, I had a clear plan for what came next. John and Beth thought they were playing chess while I was playing checkers, but they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated how much damage a man could do when he had nothing left to lose. Monday morning, I was going to start showing them exactly what that looked like. Sunday afternoon at Riverside Park was perfect autumn weather, crisp air, bright sunshine, and the kind of golden light that made everything look like a postcard. Under different circumstances, it would have been a beautiful day for a family outing. Becca and Brianna were waiting for me at the playground, sitting on swings that were too small for them now. Brianna was 13, quieter than her sister, with dark hair and serious eyes that missed nothing. She'd always been my little shadow, following me around the house and asking endless questions about how things worked. Today she wouldn't even look at me. Hey, girls. I sat on the swing between them, feeling ridiculous on the tiny seat. Thanks for coming. Mom said we had to, Brianna said, still staring at the ground. Do you want to be here? She shrugged. I don't know. Becca was more direct. This is weird, Dad. Everything is weird now. I know it is. I'm sorry about that. Are you and Mom getting divorced? Yes. Because of Uncle John? I looked at my 15-year-old daughter and realized she already knew more than I'd given her credit for. Partly because of Uncle John. That's gross. Yeah, it kind of is. Brianna finally looked up at me. Are you mad at us? The question hit me like a punch to the chest. Mad at you? Bri, why would I be mad at you? Because we're staying with Uncle John, because Mom said we couldn't call you. I'm not mad at you. I'm not mad at either of you. None of this is your fault. Then whose fault is it? I considered lying, giving them some sanitized version about how sometimes adults grow apart and nobody's really to blame. But these were my daughters, and they deserved the truth. It's your mom's fault for having an affair. It's Uncle John's fault for sleeping with a married woman. And it's my fault for not paying enough attention to what was happening in our family. Becca started swinging slowly, her feet dragging in the dirt. So everyone screwed up. Pretty much. What happens now? Now we figure out how to be a family even though your parents aren't married anymore. But we're living with Uncle John, Brianna said. That makes it complicated. Very complicated. We swung in silence for a while, three people trying to figure out how to navigate a situation that had no good solutions. Finally, Becca spoke up. Dad, can I ask you something? Anything. Are you going to try to get back at them? The question surprised me with its directness. What makes you ask that? Because you looked really angry yesterday, and Mom seemed scared of something. I stopped swinging and turned to face both girls. I'm going to protect myself and my business. I'm going to make sure the divorce settlement is fair, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows the truth about what happened. The truth? That your mother and your uncle betrayed someone who trusted them. That they planned this whole thing while pretending everything was normal. That they hurt a lot of people to get what they wanted. Brianna frowned. Will that help anything? It'll help me sleep at night. What about us? Will it help us? That was the question I'd been avoiding, the one that made everything complicated. My daughters were caught in the middle of this mess, and anything I did to hurt Beth and John would probably hurt them too. I don't know, Bree. I hope so. We walked around the park for an hour, talking about school and friends and everything except the elephant in the room. When it was time to go, both girls hugged me tighter than usual. I love you both, I said. No matter what happens with the divorce or the business or anything else, that will never change. We love you too, Dad, Becca said. Even if you do something crazy? Brianna asked. I'm not going to do anything crazy. Promise? I looked into my 13-year-old daughter's serious eyes and realized I couldn't make that promise. I was angry enough to do something crazy and smart enough to make it count. I promise I'll always love you, I said instead. And I promise I'll always be your father. It wasn't the promise she'd asked for, but it was the only one I could make. That night, I sat in my empty house and made a list of everything I knew about Beth and John's plan. The affair, the consulting business, the Morrison Group connection, Patricia Morrison's involvement, the buyout offer, the divorce strategy. Then I made a second list of everyone who'd been affected by their actions. Me, the girls, my parents, my sister Connie, our friends, our employees, our clients. Finally, I made a third list of everyone who deserved to know the truth. The third list was very long. Monday morning, I started making phone calls. The first call was to my mother. Ruth Tate was 72 years old, sharp as a tack, and had never liked Beth much to begin with. She listened without interruption as I explained the situation. That little tramp, she said when I finished. I knew she was trouble the day you brought her home. Mom, and John, I'm ashamed of him. Your father would roll over in his grave. I need your help. What kind of help? I need you to call everyone in the family, everyone who matters. I want them to hear the truth from us before Beth and John start spinning their version. Consider it done. What else? I need you to vote your shares against any major business decisions until this gets sorted out. My mother owned 20% of Tate Electrical, shares my father had left her when he retired. Combined with my 40%, we could block any attempt by John to make unilateral changes to the company. Already planned on it. That boy's not getting control of your father's business without a fight. The second call was to our company's insurance agent. I wanted to make sure our coverage was adequate for the Morrison Group projects, and I wanted to document any concerns about working outside our normal scope. The third call was to Dave Hendricks. I need the names of everyone Patricia Morrison screwed over, and I need them today. By noon, I had a list of 12 men who'd been destroyed by Patricia's divorce machine. By evening, I'd talked to all of them. 3 were willing to go public with their stories. 2 more agreed to provide documentation of Patricia's methods. Tuesday morning, I called the local newspaper. City desk, this is Karen. I have a story about a divorce attorney who's been systematically defrauding her clients' husbands. Are you interested? Depends on the story and the evidence. I have documentation of conflicts of interest, witness testimony, and a pattern of behavior going back 5 years. Can you be here in an hour? I'm already in the parking lot. Karen Mullins was an investigative reporter who'd won awards for exposing corruption in city government. She was exactly the kind of person who'd take Patricia Morrison's operation seriously. I spent 3 hours in her office, walking through everything I'd learned about Patricia's methods. Karen took notes, asked pointed questions, and requested copies of all my documentation. "This is good stuff," she said finally. "But I'll need to verify everything independently, and I'll need to give Patricia a chance to respond." "How long will that take?" 2 weeks, maybe 3. Investigations like this can't be rushed." "I don't have 3 weeks." "Why not?" "Because they're planning to destroy my business before anyone finds out what they've been doing." Karen leaned back in her chair and studied me. "Mr. Tate, are you looking for justice or revenge? Is there a difference?" "Usually, yes." "Then I guess I'm looking for both." Wednesday morning, I got a call from John. "Jamie, we need to talk." "About what?" "About the Morrison project. We've got problems." I wasn't surprised. "What kind of problems?" "They're claiming the electrical work doesn't meet code. They want us to redo everything, at our expense." "How much?" $80,000. Maybe more." "And if we don't?" "They'll sue us for breach of contract, and they'll make sure we never work in this city again." I sat in my empty kitchen, holding the phone and trying not to smile. Everything was happening exactly as I'd predicted. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "I want you to help me fight this. We're partners, Jamie. We're family." "Family, that's rich coming from you." "Jamie, I know you're angry." "I'm not angry anymore, John. I'm just done." "Done with what?" "Done being your partner. Done being your brother. Done pretending that what you and Beth did was anything other than a betrayal." "So, you're just going to let them destroy the company?" "I'm going to let them try. But when they do, everyone's going to know exactly how it happened, and who was responsible." I hung up the phone and called Karen Mullins. "I have an update on that story," I said, "and I think you're going to want to move up your timeline." Thursday afternoon, the first article appeared online. "Local attorney accused of divorce fraud scheme." It was everything I'd hoped for. Detailed, damning, and prominently featuring Patricia Morrison's photo, alongside quotes from 5 of her former clients' ex-husbands. Friday morning, the follow-up article appeared in print. "Electrical company caught in divorce attorney's web." This one focused specifically on Beth and John's relationship with Patricia, complete with documentation of the Morrison Group connection and the suspicious timing of Beth's consulting business. By Friday afternoon, my phone was ringing constantly. Reporters, lawyers, friends, family members, and complete strangers who'd seen the articles and wanted to know more. The best call came from Morrison Group's CEO. "Mr. Tate, this is Robert Morrison. I think we need to meet." "About what?" "About Patricia Morrison. She's my ex-wife, and I had no idea she was using my company to manipulate her divorce clients." "Your ex-wife?" "Divorced 3 years ago. Nasty business. She kept my name, but not my goodwill, apparently." "What about the electrical work? Your people are claiming it doesn't meet code." "My people don't know anything about electrical codes. Someone's been feeding them information, telling them what to complain about." "Someone like Beth Tate?" "That would be my guess." I met Robert Morrison that evening at a restaurant downtown. He was nothing like I'd expected. Mid-50s, soft-spoken, and genuinely apologetic about the situation. "Patricia has been using my company's name to legitimize her schemes," he said. "I had no idea until I saw the newspaper articles." "What are you going to do about it?" "First, I'm firing everyone who was involved in this mess. Second, I'm paying Tate Electrical for all the work we contracted, plus a bonus for the trouble we've caused. Third, I'm giving you a 5-year exclusive contract for all our electrical needs." "Why?" "Because Patricia destroyed my life 3 years ago, and I'd like to return the favor." Saturday morning, I woke up to find protesters outside Patricia Morrison's office building. By Saturday afternoon, the State Bar Association had announced an investigation into her business practices. Saturday evening, Beth called. "Jamie, we need to talk. I think we've said everything we need to say. Please, just give me 5 minutes." She was crying, which was something I hadn't heard in years. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at the coffee shop where we'd had our first date 20 years ago. Beth looked terrible. Dark circles under her eyes, her hair unwashed, wearing sweatpants and an old t-shirt. This wasn't the polished professional who'd served me divorce papers a week ago. "You destroyed my life," she said without preamble. "You destroyed your own life. I just made sure everyone knew about it." "Patricia's been suspended. The Morrison Group fired me. John's talking about bankruptcy." Sounds like consequences. The girls are humiliated. Their friends' parents won't let them come over anymore. Brianna's been crying for 2 days. That hit harder than I'd expected. "I'm sorry about the girls." "Are you? Because you could have handled this privately. You could have just taken the divorce settlement and moved on." "I could have, but then you and John would have gotten away with it." "Gotten away with what?" "Falling in love." "Gotten away with fraud, with conspiracy, with using my own business to fund your affair while you plan to destroy me." Beth wiped her eyes with a napkin. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this." "How was it supposed to happen?" "You were supposed to take John's buyout offer. I was supposed to get a clean divorce. We were all supposed to move on with our lives. And I was supposed to end up with nothing. You were supposed to end up free. Free and broke and humiliated." Beth was quiet for a long moment. "I never meant to hurt you this much. But you did it anyway." "Yes, I did it anyway." We sat in silence, surrounded by the ghosts of better times. This was where we'd planned our future, where we'd dreamed about the life we were going to build together. Now we were planning its destruction. "What happens now?" Beth asked. "Now you face the consequences of your choices." "And the girls?" "The girls will be fine. Kids are resilient." "Will they forgive me?" "Eventually. But they'll never forget." "Will you?" I looked at this woman I'd loved for 15 years, this stranger who'd systematically destroyed everything we'd built together, and realized that my anger was finally starting to fade. "No," I said. "I'll never forget. But I'll stop caring, eventually." "Jamie?" "Goodbye, Beth." I left her sitting in the coffee shop and walked out into the cool evening air. My phone was buzzing with messages, reporters, lawyers, friends, family members who wanted updates on the situation. I ignored them all and drove home to my empty house, where I opened a beer and sat on my front porch, watching the sun set over the neighborhood where I'd thought I was going to grow old with my wife. Tomorrow, I'd start rebuilding my life. I'd buy John out of the business, repair the relationships that could be repaired, and figure out how to be a single father to 2 teenage daughters who were caught in the middle of their parents' war. But tonight, I was just going to sit here and enjoy the silence of a man who'd finally stopped pretending that other people's betrayals were his fault. My phone rang one more time. It was Becca. "Dad, are you okay?" "I'm fine, kiddo. Are you?" "I think so. Mom's pretty upset." "I know she is. Did you really have to do all that stuff? The newspaper articles and everything?" "I thought I did. Now I'm not so sure." "Uncle John moved out. He's staying at a hotel." "How do you feel about that?" "Relieved, I guess. It was weird having him here." "Where's your mom?" "In her room. She's been crying a lot. And you're taking care of her." "Someone has to." I closed my eyes and felt the weight of what I'd done settling on my shoulders. In my quest for justice, I'd turned my 15-year-old daughter into her mother's caretaker. "Becca, listen to me. What happened between your mother and me, that's not your responsibility to fix. I know. Do you? Because you sound like you're trying to take care of everyone. Someone has to, she repeated. No, someone doesn't. The adults made this mess, and the adults will clean it up. Will you? Will I what? Clean it up. Make things normal again. I looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky and tried to think of an honest answer. I'll make things better, I said finally. I can't make them normal. Normal is gone forever. But I can make them better. Promise? Promise. After I hung up, I sat on my porch for another hour, thinking about promises and consequences and the price of revenge. I'd won the war against Beth and John, but the victory felt hollow now that I could see the collateral damage. Tomorrow, I'd start making things better. Starting with my daughters, who deserved a father who was more interested in building their future than destroying their mothers. But first, I had one more phone call to make. Karen, it's Jamie Tate. I want to add something to your story. What kind of something? The kind that shows everyone involved as human beings instead of villains. Including your ex-wife? Especially my ex-wife. Because that's what fathers do. They protect their children, even from the consequences of their own justified anger. Even when it means being the bigger person in a situation where nobody deserves that kind of grace.